hope. Justice.
Ready.
It could save this city.
Should we call, is backup the term you use?
Yeah.
Welcome. This is the Professional Amateur Hour coming to you with another review. Today we're going to be looking at The Watch, which is a show from 2021. It's done by BBC America. It stars Richard Dormer, Lara Rossi, Marima Corlett, Joe Eaton-Kent, and Adam Hugel. This is a fantasy show about a police department in a fantasy town, and there's some evil forces who want to destroy the city with a big dragon. What will happen exactly? Well, you have to watch and find out. So what works in this show? Well, actually, I think quite a few things do work. I know it was inspired by the Discworld novels, but it does take quite a bit of a departure from the kind of traditional fantasy genre stuff. Like, there's no sword fights, but everyone's shooting each other with crossbows, which I always thought was really fun. There's lots of magic, lots of kind of magical creatures, you know, dragons, dwarves, that type of stuff. And all of that works. I think the setting is pretty well thought out. Like, there is legal crime, legal and taxed crime, with the Assassin's Guild and the Thieves Guild, as well as they have a well thought out history of like dwarves or certain dwarf societies, and all the characters have great backstories. So generally the whole world, I think, is really well put together. So it's not really a fantasy show per se. I would say there's definitely fantasy elements, like everything I mentioned before, but it does have a little bit more. I would say it's kind of like fantasy punk, if I was to coin a phrase, where it is kind of dirty and rock and roll at the same time. And because of that, they really have this kind of punk atmosphere surrounding the characters. So yeah, fantasy punk is what I would call this. I thought that was a good, interesting choice. Definitely unique and quirky. I thought the acting was top-notch. Everyone was really putting their heart into their characters. Everyone was really inhabiting their different roles. There was definitely some even standout performances, but everyone was doing really well. One standout performance would be Marima. She plays a female dwarf who's really, really fiery, and she plays it excellently. She tries to take on everyone who's bigger than her, which is everyone in the show. There's lots of like forced perspective stuff to make her look pretty tiny, which I enjoyed. I thought it went a long way to add kind of that fantasy element to this show. But generally, she was one of my favorite characters for sure. Another standout performance was from Joe. Joe plays Cherry on the show, who's this transsexual woman detective. It's played quite straight, very respectful of the character. And all the other characters are very respectful of Cherry as well. I know there could be lots of humor coming from that, but they decide not to do that. There's a little bit of humor when they have to like dress up in disguises and stuff, but I thought it was a great character. Joe really gives it their all, really puts their heart and soul into it, and I thought that really went a long way for me. Alright, so what doesn't work? Well, there's one thing that I think would really turn off people who try to watch this show, and that is the main character of Sam. Sam, played by Richard. Richard does a good job at acting. He's looking very grizzled in this TV show, lots of wrinkles. But the character itself, I think, is just so poorly written. There's no redeeming qualities about them. They're always drunk. They're always trying to pass the buck, get out of responsibility. They wear way too much eye makeup, and there's nothing redeeming about him. He's the same kind of dirtbag at the beginning as he is at the end. They could definitely have a storyline where, you know, he tries to be the best he can. He sobers up a little bit, but they didn't take that route. And I think this main character, there's very little to connect with, or at least me personally, very little to connect with. And I think a lot of people would feel that way as well. So if you are looking to get into the show, don't take Sam as the main character. Think of it more as like a team, like the CSI team or whatever. And I think you'd enjoy it quite a bit more if you can kind of look past Sam. So who is this show for exactly? Well, I would say fantasy lovers would probably have a good time with it. It is quirky, it is unique. It doesn't have the kind of the sword fighting aspect like Game of Thrones or anything, but I would say it does have its own thing. Again, it is fantasy punk, so if that's something that sounds interesting to you, give it a watch. Just try to look past Sam, think about the other characters, get attached to the other characters, but I think you'll have a good time in general. For a rating, I would give it a 6 out of 10, because it's just so hard to get over Sam. But there's lots of stuff there for you if you want to stick with it. Alright, so that's it from me. Did you watch it? Leave a comment telling us your thoughts about it. As always, like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.